healthy to attend today.
Yes, to the honorable guests, Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences Universitas Indonesia, Professor Dr. Semiarto Aji Purwanto, M.Sc, Head of Department of International Relations Universitas Indonesia, Mbak Asra Virgianita, PhD.
And our respectful speakers, Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, Dr. Premesha Saha, Mr. Veeramalla Anjaiah, Mr. Makmur Keliat, PhD, Mr. Haryadi Wirawan, PhD, and our moderator, Mr. Agung Nurwijoyo, M.Sc, and all of our attendees in this event.
Welcome to the International Seminar on India's Increasing Role of the Global Stage, an Advantage to Indonesia and the Indo-Pacific region. Before we begin, please allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Kanesha.
And my name is Romy. We are going to be your masters of ceremony for today's seminar. Firstly, we would like to thank you all for coming today and also for the Department of International Relations, Universitas Indonesia, in collaboration with Sahabat India, in creating a platform for us to gain insights and discuss about the increasing role of India on a global scale.
Yes, leading up to their G20 presidency in the upcoming year, India emerges as a country with not only the biggest population growth in the world, but also successful development in their economy, military, and technology. This breaks the marginalization and underestimation of the country thus far, which then puts India in the position of recognition for its resilience and commitment.
Absolutely. And as a country that has a great relationship with India, Indonesia is ecstatic to see this opportunity. Today's seminar and discussion would and could be a medium for mutual acknowledgement for both countries as growing, prosperous countries with economic developments to build. We sincerely hope that this aim could be reached and our audience can gain new knowledge and insights from this event.
Yes, as a reminder, before we begin the event, we would like to request you to stay seated and keep following the health protocol for our safety.
Absolutely. And I think we can now start this event. But before that, we would like to request all of our audience to stand up as we will start by singing the national anthem of the Republic of Indonesia.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay in your position as we will continue to sing the national anthem of India.
Janagana mana adhinayaka jaya he Bharata bhagya vidhata Punjab Sindh Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga Uchala Jaladhi Taranga Tava Shubha Name Jage तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated now.
All right, to start the event, we would like to invite the Dean of FISIP UI, Professor Dr. Semiarto Aji Purwanto, M.Sc, to give a welcoming speech for today's seminar. Mas Aji, please come to the podium. Thank you.
Selamat sore, good afternoon. We are here to attend a very important event today, which is organized by the International Relations Department of the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Indonesia, an international seminar entitled India, Increasing Roles on the Global Stage, an Advantage to Indonesia and the Indo-Pacific region. Well, the audience, we all know that the Indo-Pacific region from time to time today is very important, increasing very important, not just the demographic or the population size that increasing, but also the roles of the nations, the countries in the Indo-Pacific regions. More importantly, a lot of things that we have to do in the future is to increase the cooperation between countries in the Indo-Pacific regions. And India has become the very anticipated rising power in the world today. And I think Indonesia as a developing countries have excellent examples in India. And just recently, last year's a delegation from Czech Republic also visited FISIP, our faculty. And as you know, Czech Republic is now become the presidency of Indo-Pacific region for European Union. And Indonesia has also plays very important roles in the international global level by chairing the G20 nations, and now Indonesia is the chair for the ASEAN countries. And I think the cooperation between these two nations is from time to time, again, is expected to be increasing. And like I mentioned earlier, that India has also been building its power and influence around the Indo-Pacific since its independence, And the closeness between Indonesia and India, we are expected to be more resulted in harmony for the regions. And today we are very happy, and I would like also to greet the speakers. We have 5 speakers that also have been presented here. 3 of them are here in the Universitas Indonesia campus, while 2 others will attend from the online, from the Zoom platform. I would like firstly to greet Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, a former General Officer Commanding of the Indian Army, and now a Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir in Ganderbal, India. And the second speaker will be Dr. Makmur Keliat, our Associate Professor from International Relations Department from Universitas Indonesia, and Dr. Haryadi Wirawan, also a Senior Assistant Professor at the Department of International Relations in Universitas Indonesia. And we have Dr. Premesha Saha, a Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi. And last but not least, Mr. Veeramalla Anjaiah, senior journalist residing in Jakarta. And we will have Mr. Agung Nurwijoyo, a lecturer in the Department of International Relations, as the moderator in this session. I would like to thanks actually for to the head of Department of International Relations, Dr. Asra, for organizing this event, and also for the audience, all the participants of this international seminars that has attend this late afternoon. Yeah, we will have a discussion session maybe for about 90 minutes, and I really hope that our discussion would be a very enjoyable discussion, and we'll be come up with a fruitful discussion today. Without any further words, I'd like to open this seminar, and I wish you good luck. Thanks.
Thank you so much to Mr. Aji for the meaningful welcoming speech. Now for today's discussion, we will be inviting Mr. Agung Nurwijoyo, M.Sc, as moderator, a lecturer at International Relations, Universitas Indonesia. Mr. Agung Nurwijoyo is the secretary of the undergraduate program, Department of International Relations, Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Indonesia. He received his master's degree at Middle Eastern and African Studies, Gazi Universitas Turkey. And Mr. Agung is interested in researches about international politics and diplomacy, area studies especially about Middle East and Africa, also South-South cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Agung Nurwijoyo.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? Fine? Okay. First of all, Honorable Professor Semiarto Aji Purwanto, Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Indonesia. Honorable Ibu Asra Virgianita, PhD, Head of Department of International Relations, Department of International Relations, FISIP Universitas Indonesia. Mas Professor Freddy, lecturer at Department of International Relations, FISIP Universitas Indonesia. Our speakers, distinguished participants, today we will start our discussion, and welcome. First of all, I hope to tell to you that welcome to International Seminar on India's Increasing Role on the Global Stage, an advantage to Indonesia and Indo-Pacific region, co-organized by Department of International Relations FISIP UI in collaboration with Sahabat India. Today, I am Agung Nurwijoyo, lecturer at IR Department FISIP UI, serving you as moderator today. And this seminar actually is so timely, I think. It's based on three main reasons. The first one, I think, because of India has become the very anticipated rising power in the world today. Yeah. Based on its population, based on its, India has the fifth biggest economy in the world today, and also India has the world's fourth strongest military force. Not only that strong power, but also India also has a major source of talent or software field. I've ever heard that Prime Minister Narendra Modi ever said, if we are thinking that IT is information technology, Narendra Modi said IT is India's talent or India's tomorrow. Yeah, and based on this is the realities that we are facing right now everywhere. And also India is famous for its pharmacy industry. That's the first reason, I think. And the second one, why it becomes so timely, because of India is the leader of G20 nowadays. Yeah, under India's presidency with the slogan of One Earth, One Family, and One Future, and we are having such challenges right now in 2023 with the global economics. I think the world waits India today. And the third one, India has also building its power and influence around the Indo-Pacific, and as we know that since 1991, India has looked its policy and fine-tuned it in era of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with Act East policy. I think this is something also interesting things. And we are talking about this region, the closeness with Indonesia, also something important. Indonesia as India's strategic partner, and India and Indonesia and India has a lot of similarities from its name, from both of them democracy. Yeah, if we are heard Ramayana, we also heard about Ramayana, and if I'm not mistaken, some of the food also a little bit similar. For example, as we know, kue ape, apam, yeah, kue ape in India. Kue apa ya, if I'm mistaken. I read it this morning in a book here. And this is a lot of things that we have a lot of similarities based on many identities and characteristics. And also about the political practice of non-aligned politics. This is also something that we are need to much more highlight. And to be honest, of course, in this occasion, I don't want to be, I'm not intended to be the sixth speakers. I'm not alone in here. Without further ado, I will invite the first speaker. We have Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain. He is the former General Officer Commanding of Indian Army and present Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir, Ganderbal, India. Actually, Mr. Syed Hasnain, he has served in turbulent environment and hotspots from Sri Lanka to Siachen Glacier, in Jammu and Kashmir, and many places. And also, he has 6 decoration awards by the President for India and 2 by the Army Chief. Yeah. And the second speaker, we also have Dr. Premesha Saha. She is a fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, ORF, in New Delhi, India. And she is, her research focus on Southeast Asia, East Asia, Oceania, and the emerging dynamics of the Indo-Pacific region. And Dr. Premesha has completed her PhD from the Center of Indo-Pacific Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. And the third speaker, we have Mr. Veeramalla Anjaiah. He is a senior journalist from Jakarta and coordinator of Sahabat India Group. And Mr. Veeramalla holds Master of Philosophy degree in Southeast Asian and Southwest Pacific Studies from School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. The fourth speaker, we have Makmur Keliat. He is Associate Professor of International Relations. His research interest in political economy and ASEAN, and also he is graduated from GNU. And the fifth speaker, we have Pak Haryadi Wirawan. He is Senior Assistant Professor of IR, and his research interest in inter-religion affairs in Indian subcontinent and also IR in South Asia. Yeah, I will invite to the stage Pak Makmur, Pak Veeramalla, and Mas Har, and also welcome to Mr. Hasnain and Dr. Premesha Saha. Welcome to the stage. Okay. Okay, before we listen about this discussion, I think let me tell you how will this seminar will run. Yeah. First, each speaker will present 15 minutes presentation, and following that we will have 25 minutes for Q&A session. And I think, I forgot that when I read all of the resume from all of the speakers, I found something interesting. Yeah. 4 from them, yeah, Dr. Premesha, Pak Veeramalla, Pak Haryadi, and Pak Makmur, 4 of them are graduated from GNU. So it's a little bit a reunion, mini reunion, yeah, from GNUs as alumni of GNUs. Okay, this is something interesting that we are find in this forum, and I think now we will invite Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain as the first speaker to deliver the presentation in the next 15 minutes for Mr. Atta Hasnain. Floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. What a pleasure, what an honor which you have bestowed on me to invite me for this very, very important seminar. A seminar dedicated to India. That's not something which is usually done in countries internationally. But I'm really elated that you have decided to concentrate and focus on India. I'll be trying to be very brief. 15 minutes, I will try and cover everything as much as I can. There's something left over, and maybe in the Q&A we can cover that. I would also like to add to my bio that I was a member of the India-Indonesia Peace and Cooperation Committee set up by the two governments with a decision taken in 2011, but it came together in 2016. And I have made 3 visits to Jakarta as a part of this committee and welcomed members of your committee from Indonesia also back in India here. I was here very much to receive the Indonesian president when he came here. I've attended the banquet also. So I'm very well familiar with the personalities of Indonesia. I have great respect for your culture, great respect for you as a nation. Having said that, let me spend 5 to 7 minutes telling you a little more about the strategic aspects of it. Since you have particularly focused on India's increasing role in the global stage, I think this needs to be highlighted. Number one, India is a democracy. Question marks here and there keep coming up internationally from the international media, interested parties here and there. But at the end of the day, India has the whole year round, India has electioneering activity. Just remember that. Secondly, we are a nation which is very populous. I mean, 1.4 billion. And we have to look for ways by which we make up for this very high teeming population. Therefore, our economic development is one of our most important engagements anywhere. We are a $3.91 trillion economy today. Our aspirations were to make it into a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Unfortunately, the pandemic came in the middle and put us back in the first year by minus 24%, in the second year by minus 7%, and in the third year, happily, with the focus of everyone and the cooperation of everyone, India made almost 6.5% growth in its GDP. It bounced back. Today, it is the fastest growing economy in the world. Our aspirations are to make it a $5 trillion economy by 2030 and a $10 trillion economy by 2035. If that has to be achieved, India cannot afford to have security issues troubling it. We need to be focused on our industry, on our manufacturing, on our education, on our social values. These are the things which make a nation, not war fighting. I am a military man, but let me tell you, at the end of the day, I am the one person who will tell you, I will never want to go to war, because wars destroy nations. We are there to prevent wars. Armed forces are always there to prevent wars. So this is our aspiration, and we hope to be able to promote our aspiration worldwide with cooperation with different players, important players who wish to cooperate with us. Our outreach, our foreign policy is all based upon that. We've got among our population, we have a very high percentage of young people. 65% of our population is less than 35 years old. We are fully conscious of this fact that this population can be a huge value for us, or at the same time, it can be a great threat to us. If this population is not educated, if this population does not have valid aspirations, it can go completely askew. And therefore, we have to ensure that we focus on our demographics to make sure that our population remains focused. Young population remains focused. Our outreach is not only through diplomacy, it is also through a lot through soft power. And you are aware, I think there can't be a bigger example of the expansion of soft power than the 4th century AD of the Indian history, when under the famous Gupta kings of India, India spread its soft power, spread its wings of soft power into Southeast Asia. And you find our footprint coming into Indonesia, into Bali, into Malaysia, into Thailand. Much of Indian Sanskritic culture, etc., finds itself embedded there even today. The greatest thing which I always talk about as an ambassador of Indonesia is that yours is one nation which knows how to respect different cultures. This is a great quality of your nation. I find people having names which are based upon my Hindu mythology. Wonderful. Why not? After all, this is part of your history. And this is the kind of soft power that we look forward to. We hope to be able to do much more outreach with our Bollywood, our culture, our things such as our philosophies and thinking, or overall yoga. There's so many aspects of soft power which go into it. We do not want to only make strategic cooperation as the vehicle of our togetherness and our friendship between our nations. Today we are heading the G20. We have taken it over from Indonesia. And as I'm speaking today, there are 3 major seminars going on in Indian cities. One Earth, One Family, One Future is what is the credo which has been given here very appropriately. We are also looking at international financial architecture, very correctly identified by you in the concept paper. Sustainable finance, infrastructure, global economy, health and international taxation. And may I add to it a very, very important aspect which both India and Indonesia face as threats, and that is disaster, natural disasters, right? I am a member of the National Disaster Management Authority of India, and I can assure you even now at Ahmedabad, there is a seminar going on disaster risk reduction and enhancing disaster risk resilience. This has become a part of our national culture today. Having said that, a word on our armed forces before I show you 1 or 2 maps and we talk about India's role in the Indo-Pacific. Our armed forces, yes, large land forces, 1.1 million strong. We've got long borders with China, with Pakistan, not too friendly relations with both countries. We have had history of wars and standoffs with both countries. Today, our armed forces are modernizing. They have not fully modernized. They are modernizing at the moment. We are on a path of what is called Atmanirbharta, or self-reliance. We have realized that a nation has to be self-reliant for its security. It cannot just be dependent on third nations to provide it hardware to be able to fight your wars. Today, for example, I can tell you, we ordered 5 S-400 systems from Russia. 3 of them have been delivered. 2 are yet to be delivered. And now we find we are stuck because of the Ukraine war. The 2 systems cannot reach us. If we were self-reliant, we had developed this many, many years ago, we would not be looking at any other country in the world to provide us with all this. We are looking at cyber warfare, we're looking at space aspects, we are looking at multiple aspects of modern warfare, maritime aspects, I shall explain separately when I come down to the maps. Our Air Force as a reasonably modernizing further. It is acquiring, it's got a large fleet of equipment from different countries, not from the United States, mostly from Russia, and that's a major problem that we are going to be facing in the future, because the relations, it seems we are going back to the Cold War again, and India is stuck somewhere in the middle. In these conflict situations, we are stuck somewhere in the middle. In the Ukraine war, for example, India has expressed its neutrality, and that's also very extensively due to the compulsions of the importance of the supply chain of equipment and spares from Russia, on which we are dependent. Right? At the same time, of course, we've got our friendship with the United States, our strategic relationship which is developing. We are a part of Quad, and therefore we are looking at Southeast Asia and we're looking at the Indo-Pacific differently today. I shall cover that in the last 5 minutes of my intervention here. And as far as conflicts around the world are concerned, with the Middle East, we have some excellent relations, our outreach. We have a diaspora of almost 8 million people in the Middle East. We have a huge diaspora of almost 2.5 to 3 million people in the United States. We've got a diaspora of over 1 million people in the United Kingdom. So the Indian diaspora internationally has done very well. Some of the major companies of the world, particularly in the software power industry, are headed by Indians today. A very large number of Indian people from Indian origin are today a part of the US government, the Canadian government. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is a person of Indian origin. So there are lots and lots of pluses that have happened in the last couple of years, which is focusing this attention on India to see what role it will perform as we go into the future. Now, let me just come down to 2-3 aspects on Aish. For that purpose, I will just share a map with you. Oh, can you please enable the screen sharing, because it is disabled at the moment. Even as it is being enabled, I hope it is enabled now. No, it is not. It doesn't matter. If it is not enabled, it doesn't matter. Let me explain to you. India sits atop of the Indian Ocean, right? We are like a crown on top of the Indian Ocean. The importance of the Indian Ocean in the world matrix today is that 60 to 65% of the international trade goes through the Indian Ocean. It travels from the Suez Canal, south of Sri Lanka, and goes through the streets of Malacca. China, which is, I won't call China an adversary as such, but I will say, because India has also got great cooperation with China, $120 billion worth of trade today, much of it is in favor of China. But we have got our differences with China on our border and otherwise internationally. What is the prime purpose for this? The reason why this difference is there is primarily because China is fearsome, fears India, and it does not trust India. It thinks that India is a rival for power in Asia. It feels that India, at a certain stage in history later, in the future, will look at ways and means of how to reduce China's capability and power. There is no truth to this. India has never expressed enmity against anyone. We wish to only do well for our own population. We want to see ourselves a $10 trillion economy. We want to see ourselves as a $20 trillion economy. China may continue progressing. It's already an $18 trillion economy. The problem that China faces today, or it perceives from India, is that the energy routes coming through the Indian Ocean via the Straits of Malacca onto the eastern seaboard are threatened by India's presence. If the Indian Navy wishes to be offensive, then in cooperation with their many other navies, it can choke out much of the Indian Ocean routes, particularly the routes closer to the Andaman Sea and the Straits of Malacca. This is what it fears. And therefore, it does not want to see India developing into a strong maritime power. It threatens India in the continental zone in the Himalayas, so that every year we have a standoff and India continues to build up its army, its land forces, and its air forces, preventing a maritime thrust to our security. This is where the importance of the Indo-Pacific comes for us. It's important for us to, first of all, allay China's fears, but secondly, to cater for a situation and contingencies tomorrow. If China acts offensive on a misperceived notion, then we should be capable of being able to deter China and defend India and Indians in India's interests. This is best done in cooperation with different countries in Southeast Asia, that's the ASEAN countries, and in East Asia. You can see the signals which have been sent out so many times before. In 1991, we went on to the Act East policy. 2014, we actually started executing it with greater vigor. In 2018, we had, on our Republic Day on 26th of January, we had all 10 heads of government and state from the ASEAN countries coming to New Delhi as guests of honor, as the chief guests. It's rare that you'll find 10 chief guests in a particular Republic Day of a nation. This was to express from our side the importance we give to ASEAN. East Asia, similarly, extremely important for us because this is the zone through which China would want to dominate the Pacific Ocean. It wants to create or make ASEAN, make East Asia, make the nations of this region into its backyard. That is not something which is acceptable to the ASEAN nations themselves. They don't want to see bullying. They don't want to see strategic bullying taking place in their own neighborhood. Unfortunately, that is the situation which has been created by China.
I interrupt you.
Today with cooperation, I'm finishing off in 1 minute. Today with cooperation, today with the Quad, which is really not a security equation, it's just a platform for cooperation with each other, economic, social, political cooperation with each other, and different other such instruments, our observer status with ASEAN. All this is enhancing our relationship. And we think Indonesia, as a nation of 220 million people or more, is one of the most significant nations of this region. Having taken over the chairmanship of G20 from us, from you, we realize your importance and the contribution which Indonesia has made.
General,
I think with more cooperation together between us, we have a very, very bright future. I shall rest my case here and await the portion in which we shall carry out our discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. 15 minutes. I can't 15 minutes. Yeah. Thank you, General Atta, for your remarkable speech about the component of India's role in the global stage. I think in this forum also can take into notes a lot of things that the role of India today, from the democracy until how the India's role in many areas in the world today. I think this is a remarkable speech for opening our discussion to boost our understanding about the role of India. Once again, thank you. And next, we move to the second speaker. Yeah, we invite Dr. Premesha to give your presentation in the next 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair. And firstly, this brings back a lot of memories. I was in Indonesia from 2016 to 17 during the course of my PhD for my field work as a Dharma Siswa scholar, and I visited UI on several occasions. So this brings back a lot of memories. Thank you so much for the invitation, and especially to Pa Anjaiah for this invitation. So for my presentation, since the previous speaker has already spoken a lot about India's global profile in terms of demography and other assets. So I'll quickly jump into the Indo-Pacific bandwagon, which is happening, and what kind of a role India is playing. And given the title of this seminar, how can Indonesia be in a beneficial position from India's rising profile in this region? So first, if we talk about the Indo-Pacific and India's growing role, there are a few points that I need to make here. First is, if we see how India is being tagged or how India is being branded by all the major powers in the Indo-Pacific, this month or the March itself has seen a series of high-level visits to India, from Prime Minister Albanese to the foreign ministers of the Quad countries, obviously on the lines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting. We also had a visit from Prime Minister Kishida of Japan. when you see in all the speeches or the documents that are released after these meetings, you would see all of them tagging India as a indispensable partner in the Indo-Pacific. Even in Japan's new plan for the free and open Indo-Pacific, which was unveiled in this last visit on March 20th to 21st of Prime Minister Kishida, if you read the entire document, India has been tagged as the indispensable partner. If you read South Korea's new Indo-Pacific strategy, which was released in December last year, also, India has been tagged as a credible partner, given for its IT industry and for other credentials as well. So countries have all along, the way relations of India's bilateral relations are also evolving with these countries, especially if we see how India-US relations have evolved from signing of the LEMOAs and BECA agreements to how so many agreements that India, Australia have signed. How India's bilateral relations with countries are improving is also another proof of India's global image in the Indo-Pacific in particular, and also in global politics in general. To give certain examples, for example, I think everybody talks of the Quad, but if we talk of the Quad, I think the bilateral relation just taken off in the most significant way is the India-Australia relations, and that can be seen by the reciprocal basis arrangement, the mutual logistics agreement, and so many others that India has signed with Australia, and how the relationship has taken off. In this context also, I would say that this has a lot to do with what India is doing in the Indo-Pacific, how India is itself viewing the Indo-Pacific. The chair in his opening remarks had mentioned about India's non-alignment. There are debates, given that India is a part of so many arrangements in the minilateral and plurilateral platform. Is India really carrying on with its non-aligned policy stature anymore? The way the Ministry of External Affairs brands India's these numerous engagements is that India right now, given its Indo-Pacific vision, I always say vision because we do not have a strategy paper or a policy paper like many other countries when we talk of the Indo-Pacific. So we refer to it as the Indo-Pacific vision. So when we talk of it, India's two main approaches is to work with like-minded countries. And in that context, India calls it issue-based alignments, issue-based partnerships. India's, engagement with the Quad, you have India, Japan, Australia. There is recent news that even the India, Australia, France will now be elevated to the level of the foreign ministers meeting. We have the India, Australia, Indonesia trilateral, which has also recently had a foreign ministers meeting last year along the UNGA meeting, which happened last year. So there are so many of these minilateral and plurilateral initiatives through which India is sort of enforcing its Indo-Pacific vision. Because right now within the Indo-Pacific, besides ASEAN and the East Asia Summit, there is no overarching, regional architecture. So in a way, many are saying that these minilaterals and plurilaterals are in a way showing the cooperative architecture in the Indo-Pacific. And given that India has always repeatedly stressed that it wants to work with like-minded countries, India's engagement in Quad and all these minilaterals and plurilaterals say so. And this in a way has also enhanced India's global image within the Indo-Pacific. Now, even, moving aside from these minilaterals, the way India is even now, for instance, the way India's policy towards the Indian Ocean region has also evolved, if we see. Previously, India has always been tagged as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. India still is a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. But if we see, say, from 2015 and 16 onwards, India has welcomed working with other Indian Ocean littoral countries, even major powers like, say, France and others who are resident powers in the Indian Ocean region. Previously, India was averse to working with other countries, but now India has openly said that if we see Prime Minister Modi's speech in the International Fleet Review, which happened in Visakhapatnam in 2015, he has openly said that India alone cannot be the sole guarantor of peace in the Indian Ocean region. We are looking to work with other regional powers, to work with other littoral countries, other countries who have stakes in these regions. So, in a way that India's policy in general is evolving. Why am I mentioning the Indian Ocean here is because the Indo-Pacific is essentially a maritime geography. It's a confluence of two oceans, the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific, the Pacific Ocean. So given how India's maritime policy is also evolving, needs to be seen. But at the same time, Indo-Pacific is not only like a security architecture for India. And that can be seen from the policies that India has with regards to the Indo-Pacific. The two main policies are SAGAR, security and growth for all in the region. And we have a recent one which was released in 2019 called the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. If one looks at these two initiatives, SAGAR has been, it's mainly India's role as a first responder to any natural disaster or any crises which emerges in the Indo-Pacific region. You can see in the, even during COVID, vaccine distribution, the way India, came up as a first responder, not only to its immediate neighborhood, but also even much beyond that. In the recent earthquake in Turkey, for example, so India has been the first responder to crises in this region. That has been the essence of SAGAR. Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, if one looks at it, it's much beyond security. It talks about marine ecology, it talks about blue economy, it talks about science and tech, it talks about research collaborations. It has 7 pillars. Essentially, it has 7 pillars. And in each pillar, India is working alongside with another country. For example, Indonesia and Australia are a part of the marine ecology pillar of the IPOI. So India's Indo-Pacific is not just on, security issues. Actually, it is not based on hard security issues. It goes much beyond that. It looks at other non-traditional security issues as well. And, if the recent Quad foreign ministers meeting at the Raisina dialogue was any proof, where, the foreign ministers repeatedly stressed that the Quad is not a security grouping. So, the way the Indo-Pacific is being approached also needs to be seen. And this alone, gives out the message that it only looks to invite more countries. Why the fact that Indo-Pacific is not a security architecture is important. And herein comes in ASEAN. Because if one looks, for example, at the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, the document which was released, it was very clear that ASEAN is looking to cooperate on areas of maritime cooperation, SDGs, among others. There was infrastructure and connectivity. So I think the way India is looking at the Indo-Pacific, India's Indo-Pacific vision and ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, merges and has a lot of similarities in those regards. So I think along those lines also, India's growing role, the way India looks at the Indo-Pacific, is of great advantage for ASEAN. At the same time, I think another thing which needs, in spite of being a part of all these initiatives, India has still maintained a strategic autonomy, and that shows its growing profile. That shows its how India is rising as a power. In spite of being a part of the Quad, India has maintained a stand which is different from the other Quad members with regards to, say, for instance, the Russia-Ukraine crisis as one. So and countries have even recognized that stand, and that has not impacted the way these countries are engaging with India. So India's strategic autonomy also needs to be seen. India is, it has its own foreign policy discourse. It is not, tiptoeing alongside or following the path of any other major power. It has its own strategic autonomy. It's in place. It is working as per its own national interest. And this can only come when a country is developed enough, or when its profile is rising in the global arena. So these are certain, these are certain developments in the recent times which actually shows how India has been evolving in the global arena, how India has been, how India's profile has been, enhancing. Another area where India has entered, and I think that has begun with Southeast Asia, is now India is working as exporter when it comes to defense. India is becoming a credible defense partner also, and that can be seen from the recent BrahMos deal with Philippines. But I always say that this is just the first step. If a similar deal is, can be made with Vietnam and Indonesia, it will go a long way. So this is just the beginning, but India has at least taken the first step towards that also, and that has to do with, as Lieutenant General has mentioned, India's Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, India becoming self-sufficient in terms of, even becoming a credible defense partner in those regards. Another thing which I think paves the way for greater cooperation between India and Southeast Asia in general is that India is one such country where, between India and Southeast Asia, there is no trust deficit, because there is no outstanding dispute, any territorial dispute that the two countries, that India faces with Southeast Asia, which can be said with regards to China and the South China Sea, for example. So there will be no, hear that there can be any trust deficit which is happening with India. So that also opens the door for opportunities, for collaboration. And I think India's Act East is now the major pillar of India's Indo-Pacific. And many had questioned what is the difference between Look East and Act East? What different will India do from its Look East phase 2 than Act East? I think the major difference is that is now linked with India's Indo-Pacific, because essentially, Indo-Pacific, it looks at the Eastern Indian Ocean region and the Western Pacific. Though India's definition goes from the east, from the entire Western Indian Ocean region to the South Pacific, but the major things or the major disputes, the crises, when we talk about, it's happening in the Eastern Indian Ocean region and the Western Pacific as well. In those regards, even if one sees how India stands with regards to major disputes, like for instance, the South China Sea has evolved. Previously, we used to come up with generic statements that, which most countries do. Disputes need to be settled as regards to UNCLOS. But now you would see a slight change in statements. For instance, that, when this dispute is being resolved, it should not impede the interest of any third parties. These kind of stronger statements is coming from India's end. Yes, India doesn't engage in FONOS, but I think that is only at an advantageous position when one talks about Southeast Asia. But India did engage in a joint sale with the Philippines in 2018 or 19. I'm forgetting the exact date. Slight changes in India's policies or India's approach to these kind of major disputes as well. Yes, many have said that this has to do with the Galwan Valley clash. Yes, I do agree. This is one of the driving factors why India is becoming so much more proactive in the global arena. But that alone is not the reason. It also has to do with the fact that how India wants to emerge as a global player, as a player of importance, as a player to have a voice when it comes to global affairs. And that drives India's motto for G20, where it wants to be the voice of the global South. It wants to champion South-South cooperation at the level of G20. So I think how India's profile is rising has to do with India's rising ambitions. Yes, China factor is one of the driving factors, but it also has to be seen in terms of India's own rising ambitions. Yeah, the way India, as our External Affairs Minister Jaishankar says, that India has its own side. India has its own policy. So it only goes on to show that how India is trying to carve its image as a global player of importance in the Indo-Pacific region in general. With this, I'll end my presentation here, and I look forward to the Q&A and other questions which come up. Thank you so much.
I'm really surprised. From those two speakers, precisely 15 minutes. Okay, thank you once again, Dr. Premesha, for your presentations. I think we move forward to speakers in here. We start from Pak Makmur to giving your presentation in the next 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Moderator. Thank you also for our friends from India. I just told a joke to my friend, Pak Haryadi. Before leaving India, my supervisor told me that India is always haunting you. You will never be able to leave India emotionally. So now we are here sitting, talking together through the global internet network. Let us start my presentation. I have my presentation, please, the organizer. Okay. Let us start from the second slide. Yeah. Second page, please.
Next, please.
Yes. No. Before. Yes. This is the timeline of Indo-Pacific concept and ideas. And I made this timeline based on an article written by our strategic thinker, lady, Dewi Fortunan Anwar. And I asked my staff to make a timeline. And if we look at this timeline, we can see that at the above of the line is the idea proposed by Western country and its alliance, like Japan, Australia, and United States. And the below is raised by Indonesia and ASEAN. So that is the reason why I said that Indo-Pacific as a concept is being contested. It is a kind of evolving framework. So there is a kind of contesting discourse at regional and global level. What do we mean by Indo-Pacific? Okay. Next slide. So if you look at this picture also, we can see that we have a great number of regional framework, and the red color is ASEAN, and the orange one is ASEAN +3, and also we have ASEAN +6, East Asia Summit, APEC. India is not a member of APEC, okay? No. And we have RCP. It is very strange also that initially India was so active within the framework of RCEP, and finally India decided not to become a part of RCEP. It's quite strange. I don't know the reason. Maybe our friend from India can explain to us. And we have also IORA, we have also quadrilateral framework. So it is like a mi pangsit, spaghetti bowl in the context of Italy. So it is very difficult to do what we call, to make a difference between one regional framework and other regional framework. Sometimes I feel that it is a initiative by diplomat because they like traveling. You know? I don't know whether it's true or not, but usually we have a number of a framework and they have activities meeting from one place to another place. But I don't know how could we convince the society and the public in general that this framework is very important for our life. So there is a gap. And let us see the political and security architecture also. Next. This is like a big house, no? With a lot of door. And sometimes I am not sure whether we need this kind of house with a lot of window and door. But this is the fact. Again, when we talk about security, actually we talk about the issue of war and violence. Why do we need a lot of security framework? The issue is very clear. Violence and war. How could we differentiate from one security architecture to another? So this is a kind of overlapping architecture. Next. So we have extra-regional power network encircling ASEAN and East Asia. So the left side is between Australia, United States, and United Kingdom. If you look at this from geopolitical perspective, we may think that because they have a blue naval capacity, blue ocean capacity, Same thing happened to India, you know. It is very difficult for me. What is the strategic reason for India, Australia, United States, and Japan? The only direct understanding, if I look at this picture, is they try to encircle China. So, extra-regional power, especially from India, should try their best to convince others that this is very instrumental in creating stability in the region. Of course, I fully aware that India has a aircraft carrier. Okay. And Australia, United States, and United Kingdom, I think they have a long tradition in evolving a strategic relationship. Next. So let us see the beyond Asia Pacific, how India and Indonesia is part of what we call G20. And I think this year India is to host, to host India, to host G20. And I don't know whether the audience is ever trying to find the document, what's the difference between document released by White House and released by our government. If you look at, if you access the document through White House, you will see there is a very short sentence. One issue is not accepted or by consensus. One, in my understanding, though that document does not state clearly, in my understanding, this is the issue of debt forgiveness. I think there is a difference between China and other G20 countries, how to deal with the issue of debt forgiveness, especially for African countries. But this, I think 3 or 4 days ago, I read in the media that India is raising the issue of debt. I don't know how to deal with the issue in the G20, but in my understanding, because China has a great number of state-owned companies in Africa, they may think that the issue of debt should be managed B2B, business to business, not under the government framework. Because under the government framework, it deals with the state budget. Next slide. So this is the future challenges insofar as a regional framework are concerned. The first is how to deal with the question of redundancy, how to differentiate one regional framework from others, and also the scope of cooperation, the issue of maritime connectivity, sustainable development, economic cooperation, how to put all this cooperation under each of the regional cooperation. And then the second one is question of membership. I think the area is huge, and some areas also are volatile. South Asia, I think, in an Indonesian perspective, still has a problem, serious problem with Pakistan and volatile area. And the third issue is question of institutional capacity. ASEAN always think that they have to play a central role, the centrality of ASEAN, but the capacity, the institutional capacity, I think, is very limited in terms of resources. How to strengthen the resources. I still remember when I was part of the network of East Asia think tank, when we have a meeting at regional level, always we have to rely on China, we have to rely on South Korea, we have to rely on Japan, because we don't have resources. So this is the serious problem. We can create a number of regional cooperation, but later on, I think finance really matters. Next step. And this is the strategic challenge for Indonesia and India. Traditionally speaking, I think India and Indonesia is very similar. Politically and economically, Indonesia is always obsessed with the issue of berdikari, self-reliance, and India also Swadeshi. And I live in India 5 years and then come back here. I came to realize that most people are aware that political independence is less or nothing without economic independence. So that issue always part of political discourse. And I think how to deal with this, what you call, political and economic tradition is very important. But I just read in today, I think it is published by economists. And they try to compare similarity and differences between India and Indonesia. And it is interesting to note that India rely more on digital industry, and we rely more on natural resources based industry. But both are ambitious to become a part of developed countries. But India has a 1.2 billion only. 1.2 or 1.1? 1.4. 1.4. Whoa, my God. You have a huge number of population. We have 260 or 360? 260. Okay. So you have a lot of population, but you know, because I like reading data, you know, and when we had a crisis in 1998, and it takes time longer for Indonesia to recover, but not the case of South Korea. And if I look at the case of Germany also, it was destroyed during the Second World War, but they come back easily. I think the reason is because of the human resources. GDP growth can up and down, especially if we have a problem at the global level, but it is easy for country with the good human resources to come back. Because brain is always there. But finance can go away, but the people remains there with their brain. So I think sometimes we have to be, we need to be humble. Don't think about growth, because growth cannot be sustained if you don't have a good human resources. And human resources need to be long-term. It is a social investment, not like financial investment. If you talk with the finance people, you know, they need, it's a short-term. So I think both India and Indonesia need to be humble also.
1 minute left.
Yeah. Okay. And the next, I think, is before. Yeah. This is the last, I think. Geopolitical and geoeconomic dynamic is shifting to Asia Pacific. I think report made by international organization always show us that economic growth in Asia Pacific is better compared to other region. But some people are feared because China is like an engine for the growth, but becomes more assertive in a number of issues. So I think we have a geopolitical risk rising, and then also we have a problem. I think this is the latest problem, is about the sanction imposed by the United States and G7. I think India is exercising, in my understanding, is exercising what we call it strategic ambiguity. One issue to another issue, they never show us the clear position. So I think this is my presentation. Hopefully I don't spend more time than what has been said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Makmur, for your presentation. I think it's also something important to note, about the strategic and future challenges in Indo-Pacific based on India experience, and it's related to before Dr. Premesha also mentioned about the presence of India in Indo-Pacific is something is indispensable. Okay. Next, we move to the next speakers. We have Pak Veeramalla to give presentation in the next 15 minutes. Please, Pak.
Yeah.
The floor
Thank
is
you,
yours.
moderator. Good evening to all, everybody. First of all, I want to express my sincere gratitude to the International Relations Department of the FISIP of the University of Indonesia. India, my slides, please. Yeah. 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 Next slide, please. Yeah. So India and Indonesia have civilizational links of more than 2,000 years. They have good relations in the cultural, political, and economic fields. They also established a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2018, and we can see Indonesia is a world's largest Muslim country, but their main national symbol is Borobudur temple. So then India is also the world's largest Hindu state, but its national main attraction is Taj Mahal, a Muslim tradition. So this is a very unique, next slide please. And also, many Indians as well as Indonesians are unaware that they are maritime neighbors. India is not far away. It is only just 70 nautical miles from Aceh, the Indian border. If you climb onto a mountain in Aceh, you can see the lights of India. So that is very close. But many people in India and Indonesia do not know that they are maritime neighbors. Yeah. The next slide, please. Yeah. Today we are meeting here Professor Juwono Sudarsono Auditorium. Actually, this FISIP has some Indian connection. Some Indian connection. Many people do not know, maybe nowadays, but in the olden days we know very well. Because let's begin with the Professor Juwono Sudarsono. So he was the son of the Dr. Sudarsono, the first Indonesian ambassador to India in 1950 to 1953. So he studied his senior high school or high school in India, Professor Juwono Sudarsono. And also Dr. Sudarsono's political secretary was Professor Miriam Budiarjo, a professor in the FISIP. She was the political secretary. So both Juwono and Professor Miriam played an important role in strengthening India and Indonesia relationship. So that is the history of Indian connection with this auditorium. Next slide, please. Yeah. So now, with an estimated population of 1.42 billion, India, according to the UN estimates, will overtake China next month to become the most populous country in the world. Then also, it used to have 340 million people in 1947. But, and also out of 340 million people, more than 80% of them were living below the poverty line. And also only 12% can read and write. But today, India's literacy rate is 77%, a massive improvement from 12%. It is also the 5th largest economy in the world, with a gross domestic product of $3.91 trillion. And it is expected to become the 3rd largest economy in the world very soon by 2025. Let us look at some of India's other achievements. But actually, just last week, this week, the Indian Trade Minister announced that India's exports reached $750 billion. 750 billion. It is the 5th largest exporter in the world because it's exported $750 billion of goods and services. Because in services sector, India is leading power. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. So over the last decade, India has done an amazing job of lifting more than 130 million people out of poverty. In the last 15 or 20 years, I think India has lifted 15 million people from the poverty line. So its current poverty rate is 16.4%. So you can imagine 1947, 80% of the people were living under the below the poverty line. So it is only 16% now. So then it is unemployment rate is 7.7%. It is also self-sufficient in food production because when India became independent in 1947, its food production was only 15 million tons. So now it is producing 250 million tons, self-sufficient in food production. And India, next slide please. Yeah, India has long been one of the world's major sources of talent in the software field and a great creator of software intellectual property. It is a well-recognized name in the IT industry, being increasingly identified with high-quality IT products, services, and processes of as skilled manpower that ranks among the best in the world. India's vast proof of talented computer professionals is fueling the growth of the fast-paced IT sector in the country. Next slide, please. And India also has the title of Pharmacy of the World. It ranks 3rd globally for pharmaceutical production by volume and exports pharmaceuticals to more than 200 countries and territories. The pharma industry in India contributes more than 20% of the global generics market by volume and 62% of the global demand for vaccines. It is the #1 vaccine producer in the world. Next slide, please. With its low-cost space program, India has become the 4th country in the world to send an orbiter to Mars and has plans to a manned mission into orbit very soon. India has become the biggest market in the world for the aviation industry. Recently, Air India, India's national carrier, ordered 470 planes, 220 from Boeing and 250 planes from Airbus, a record purchase in the history of aviation. The White House welcomed the deal and said it will provide 1 million jobs within the US. So that is a very big size of the growing aviation industry in India. Next slide, please. Yeah. As the world's largest democracy, India wants to become a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. It is the only country with membership in both the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, a group that is dominated by China and Russia, and the Quad countries consisting of Japan, Australia, the US, and India, which aims to contain China in the Indo-Pacific region. It is also one of the founders of the non-aligned movement because India played a big role in the Bandung conference in 1950s. So it is very good. And also India is a member of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. India also is a leading member of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, they call it SARC, and the Indian Ocean Rim Association, they call it IORA. So it is also a very big player in these regions. And next slide, please. Yeah. India is also having nuclear weapons because it is a nuclear power. India has the world's fourth strongest military force according to the 2023 global firepower rankings, because after US is the number one, the second one is Russia, the third one is China, fourth is the India in the world, the strongest military force. And presently India has 2 aircraft carriers and it is building a third one. The next slide, please. Yeah. India's increasing role on the global stage. The world strategic landscape has been changing rapidly in the 21st century. The rising India, which is one of the globe's fastest growing economies and top hub for the service sector, wants to play a larger role on the global stage. It received praises from both the US and Russia for being an important player. However, there is a big window of opportunity for India to play a bigger role on the global stage in line with its increasing image, economic wealth, and military strength. In 2022, India became the comprehensive strategic partner of the ASEAN. It has a very good relationship with Indonesia, its maritime neighbor and strategic partner. Last year, the trade between Indonesia and India reached $32.70 billion $32 billion last year, the trade. And also I think India is now Indonesia's 4th largest export destination in the world. 4th largest export destination, because India buys a lot of palm oil and coal and paper, etc. Then both Indonesia and India recently set a new trade target of 50 billion by 2025, because it is already 32 billion last year. So in the next 2 years, it may reach $50 billion. It is a very good. And India and Indonesia also planning to sign a preferential trade agreement to boost economic relations. Next slide, please. Yeah. Countries like Australia, Japan, and some European countries also see rising India as a geopolitical counterbalance to China and an economic alternative with democratic credentials, because India and Indonesia are both democratic countries. So that is the advantage with compared to other countries. National leaders, because now India has become a star of attraction. This year alone, many foreign leaders are visiting India. For example, Egyptian President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi had visited India from January 24 to 26. He was the chief guest at the India's Republic Day. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited India from 25 to 26, and Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni from March 2 to 3, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese from March 8 to 11, and the latest visitor to India is Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida from March 19 to 21. So all the world leaders are in race to visit India and to boost its relations with India. Then next slide, please. Yeah. So in line with the growing global stature, this year India is holding the presidency of G20 countries. It will also be the chairman of the SCO. India will host the leaders of G20 and SCO in New Delhi and play a key role in finding solutions to many global issues. Next slide, please. Yeah, several scholars suggest that India has the potential to become a global superpower, a state with an extensive ability to exert influence or power in the world. Not only is it a responsible and reliable global power, but also fully supports ASEAN unity and centrality in the regional security architecture. And India, as General Hatta Hasnain said, India does not have any claims in the South China Sea, unlike China. So India is a responsible regional power which can be trusted. Then the next slide, please. Yeah. India welcomes the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific region. Both ASEAN and India issued a joint statement on cooperation on the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific for peace, stability and prosperity in the region during the 18th ASEAN-India Summit in October 2021. India wants to see a free and open Indo-Pacific. The US, Australia and ASEAN members have all expressed a common view that India should play a greater role in the region. According to India, security in the region must be maintained through a dialogue, a common rules-based order, freedom of navigation, commerce and settlement of disputes in accordance with international law. So rising India's increasing role on the global stage is not only beneficial to Indonesia and the Indo-Pacific region, but also to the world. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Veeramalla, for your presentation. I think this is also something important to take into notes, that the role of India is something important today. Yeah, in many things, Pak Veeramalla already explained to us, why India is one of the potential global superpower today because of some components that he already mentioned to us in his presentation, I think. Okay, next, last but not least, we have Pak Haryadi Wirawan. We invite him to giving in the next 15 minutes to giving presentation. Yeah. The floor is yours, Mas Har.
Thank you. I don't think I will finish that in 15 minutes. Should be less than that until you're prepared for the iftar. Yeah, it's iftar. I don't prepare also the PPT, so it's more like, you know, talking to friends. In fact, well, what I'm going to conclude in this meeting is actually it's a thing that what should be done to improve relations between Indonesia and India further. Where I've pointed out some of these issues that need to be looked at, especially with the advancement of India that has been mentioned by Mr. Anjaiah and Dr. Keliat, as well as our friends in India, is actually in the area of education, where India now provide at least 50,000 scholarships. Yeah, 50,000 scholarships for students who would like to study in India. It is one of the reasons why that the importance of educational links between India and Indonesia should be actually be used by Indonesia as well. For those of you who are not being to India, you can have this opportunity. You can take this opportunity. Yeah, India is a good place to study, really, and it's they have a very long tradition of education, a very good education. Who of you have been to India? No one? No one. You? Oh, you've been to India. Have you tried martabak? Bukan makanan India. It's not Indian food actually. Looks like Indian food. So scholarship is very important for this relationship between Indonesia and India in terms of educational perspectives, because you know, the provision of these seats for scholarships has been enormous, and educational basis in India has been very strong. Yeah, so it's good for you who has the a passion to study furthermore of all the sciences that have been provided, I think India is the place. Yeah, so Indonesia and India now have been very, very hard to create the space for Indonesian scholars and Indonesian students to learn and to study in India. Yeah, and use it them all. Yeah, I think, and now also the pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals have been shown in the videos just now. The India is known to be one of the producers of pharmaceuticals, yeah, in the world, and the price is amazingly low. So we can have it in joint ventures, then it will be very useful for our pharmaceutical industries to produce things that need to be taken by those who are sick. Yeah, this is very important, and I think India is ready to have that, to have this joint cooperation. We know, if you're fallen sick, you tend to go to doctor and get medicine, which is locally produced. It is good, yeah, but when it's been shown in the show just now, that the Indian pharmaceuticals has been very much in advance right now with the cheaper price, yeah. That is very important for us to make use of it and be at the, not to be a patient, but try to be one of the users, yeah. And because both pharmaceuticals in Indonesia and India can have a joint ventures on that, yeah. Tourists. I've read a report that last year we have been visited by at least 80,000 Indian tourists. 80,000 is a number. But how many Indonesian tourists have gone to India? Much less. Yeah, I think it should be reciprocal. Then people will have this kind of, a noted relationship that create a bondage between the two countries. Because, one of the thing like Indian film shows, I don't know whether you have born during this year yet. In the 1980s, have you been born on that year? No. Indian films have been very much popular. Oh my God, very much popular. And every cinemas, every theaters are filled with this Indian films. I'm the one who was one of the admirers of the Indian films. Though I don't understand the language, but I got the subtitles on it, but it is also one of the very happy films. Lots of songs, yeah, between script, a lot of songs, which is very nice. And today, I feel it's like lack of these films. Do you remember any of these film themes? The name of films, Indian, which is very popular in Indonesia. Yeah? No, it is like what is it? What does it mean, sir?
Something happens.
Oh, something happened. Yes. It is very, very popular. It was sung, the song was sung by siapa? Shah Rukh Khan. Shah Rukh Khan, yeah. I used to sing the song, but I can forgot. Anyway, yeah. It is something that we miss that thing today. Something that we have to revive that. As well, the culture and culture between the two is mentioned by Dr. Anjaiah that, for instance, some landmarks has been noted here, like Borobudur, etc. We have seen the tradition being made by these two states here, by these two people. And it becomes something that need to be revived and boldened, so people will understand, okay, we are actually one before. We're actually coming from an area that has been very much developed in the past. So the relationship will be then developed as well. And then now we go to the, for instance, the non-block movement. If you go back, how many, 50 years ago, or even more, when Prime Minister Nehru and President Sukarno were very, very good friends, the movement of non-block movements has been very much in high demand and on the time, because of the blocks that we made by the West and the East. And we've been like a sponsor of those peace initiatives by the Indians and Indonesian government. Yeah, and I think non-block now has somehow loosened its meanings anymore, and it doesn't really have the what is it? It's like losing the historical perspective that's been there. Yeah, so we need to revive it, and we are against the fact that non-block movements has become ceremonial like now, yeah. And last but not least is that Indonesia has the capability of mediating regional tensions, in fact. For instance, in the India-Pakistan as well as India-China, as China has built a very huge naval bases in South China Sea, in the north of Natuna Sea, and it becomes a contention between countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Indonesia could become a mediator, solely because this is only true when the tensions also has enlarged in the India and Pakistan. Although now it's less tension after the democratization in Pakistan, but still Indonesia can play some political moves to downsize the tension. Yeah, I think it's the only thing that Indonesia, it's not the only thing, I said the things that Indonesia can actually play with India, because somehow these two countries are originating themselves from the much peaceful organizations in the past. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's that's all. That's uncertain.
Okay, thank you, Pak Haryadi, for your presentation. There's a lot of things Pak Haryadi also mentioned to us about how we can improve our relations between India and Indonesia. And I think next we move, thank you for all speakers for your presentations. And I think right now we will invite, we start our Q&A sessions, yeah. We have, due to time concern, I think one session is enough. And I will invite, at the beginning, I will invite first two discussion. Actually, we have two discussion in this forum. One is both of them our students in International Relations Department. We have Quinta and we have Awani Amora. Okay, maybe we start first for Quinta.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. All right, so namaste everyone. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So my name is Quinta. I am a final year undergraduate student from the Department of International Relations in Universitas Indonesia. I would like to first of all say thank you for the department to have conducted this very insightful event. I'm sure we all learn a lot here, and also thank you for the speakers who have shared with us your insights and knowledge about India's global role. And as context, in university, I also took a class on South Asia with Mr. Agung and Mr. Haryadi. So the topic of India's global role is something that I am keenly interested in, and occasionally I also watch Bollywood movies and listen to Bollywood songs, so this is all very interesting to me. But today I want to talk about something that is more on the political aspect. And based on all of the speakers' presentation, I can infer that it is inevitable, and it is for sure that during the past few years, we have seen the increasing role of India in the global stage, especially right now. India holds the G20 presidency. I believe that it further strengthens India's prevalency in the global stage too. But I do also believe that with great power, of course, comes great responsibility. And therefore, one of the most prevalent challenges faced amidst India's increasing global role is the current geopolitical nature of the world that is filled with so much volatilities, the pandemic, and one of them, the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, obviously. So based on that, I have a question that I would like to ask to the speakers. My question would be, as a country that upholds a non-aligned principle, especially again remembering the fact that India now holds the G20 presidency, how does India plan to utilize its increasing role in the global stage to ensure that the geopolitical rift that has been shown in the last few years between some countries can be subdued so that the international community can focus on other problems at hand, especially in regards to solving and strengthening the global economy, instead of focusing solely on geopolitical rivalries? That would be my question to the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Quinta, for your questions and your response. And then next we have Awani Yamora, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yamora. I'm the postgraduate student. So yeah, moderator introduced me as Awani. My full name is Awani Yamora, so you might call me both Awani or Yamora. Either way is fine. I'm a postgraduate student in University of Indonesia, and my specialty, I'm currently working on the security studies. and hopefully this year I can final my thesis. Thank you so much. I believe we all here can feel that there are a lot of insightful information from all of the speakers. Just for the context as well, previously I had a 2 years experience in the IT company. So basically, I've worked occasionally very long time with the Indian people. So I know sometimes how does it work, how to communicate with them. So I find it very enjoyable and also very nice to work with the people with the nationality of India. So I have some questions, but before that, as we all are aware that cybersecurity threats are becoming increasingly sophisticated and also pervasive, and they pose a significant risk to businesses, governments, and individuals across the Indo-Pacific region. India, as we believe that, is one of the leading countries in the region when it comes to the security, with a strong focus on the developing cutting-edge technologies, solutions, and expertise to combat these cyber threats. As such, I think we can agree to the statement that has been stated by Ms. Sahas before, that India is actually a reliable partner here and can play a key role in helping to improve cybersecurity in other countries in the region, including Indonesia, to be more specific. So I have two questions. First, how exactly can India's expertise in this area help improve cybersecurity in the Indo-Pacific? What are the possibilities that might be upcoming in the future, and how you're going to encounter that? And second of all, how do you see, maybe I would like to, if possible, all of the panelists can also give more perspective in this. How do you see the partnership or the cooperation between Indonesia and India in the next 5 or 10 years? Do you see that we still can be, specifically for Indonesia, can we actually also be a reliable partner in this specific context? Like, for example, it's like cybersecurity. Can we get more development on that? How do you see the cooperation can be more beneficial for both of the parties? So I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mora. I think I will invite one again from the floor. If anyone have a question. Anyone? Oh, okay. Please. Mbak Nisha, in the front.
Hi, my name is Oscar, and I'm also from the postgraduate student in international relations. I'm gonna go to the point. So, Dr. Premesha Saha, she mentioned about India's engagement with the core. But I wonder, how about India's engagement with the periphery? Because we have two examples, the RCEP in 2019, when India walked away from the negotiations. Even though with Makmur slides, we could see that if Asian Pacific is the new engine of global economic growth, why walking away from it? And also in the COP26 in Glasgow, the outcome was not very productive for climate change. So after some assessment, people said that the president, the Indian representative, he changed the wording from phasing out to phasing down the coal. So these were two opportunities to be more assertive in international politics, and it could have been a huge opportunity for India to continue to be this leader and referent in the region. So how about that relationship with the periphery countries? So it could bring together these countries instead of going to the G7 and more powerful countries. That's my question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar, for your question. I think we will start to answer these three questions. We start from General Atta. If you want to give such feedback, comments, please.
Thank you. Yes,
3 minutes.
absolutely.
3 minutes.
And but am I required to answer all 3 questions? Because I can do that and be brief about it, or take only one question in great detail. What would you prefer? I think I will address all 3 questions. I will address all 3 questions. They are important questions, and I'm very glad that the students of international relations are actually dwelling on such searching issues. There is no point being comfortable about it. It's good to make your panelists uncomfortable, not to say that I'm uncomfortable in answering any of your questions. The first one on the aspect of our non-aligned status, pre-1991 non-aligned status, where has it gone today? How does it pan out into the future, particularly in the view of the fact that we are going to be playing a more proactive role internationally, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. Also, of course, in the Middle East and in Europe at the moment. I just want to only give one comment here. Remember, whatever we did in the non-aligned period, it has continues to almost remain the same even today. We have not entered into a strategic relationship in the sense an alignment with a group of countries anywhere. Even Quad continues to remain outside the parameters of security. Yes, there is a lot of progression on the Indo-US strategic partnership. There's a similar partnerships with other countries. There's a strategic partnership with Indonesia too. These are not necessarily all based upon proactive military security. Security has many connotations, and that is something we need to understand. There is also a lot to do with energy security, with human security, right? So there are different issues, and therefore, at this stage in 2023, I think we may have moved a little away perhaps from our non-aligned policy as such, but not sufficiently moved away as to make a huge difference in our outlook. It's not that we have joined a group of nations to target a second nation or to look after our own security in any way. We haven't done that. The second aspect is cybersecurity. Yes, is increasingly becoming very, very important. And in relation to cybersecurity is also space security. Many nations of Southeast Asia may not have yet entered into the realm of space, but it's a matter of time. You're going to find yourself having your own satellites and your own transponders and all kinds of things roaming around in space. And those will have to be secured too. So space security and cybersecurity. The intent of an adversary will always be to paralyze you. And we had a recent incident in Mumbai where one of the power grid of Mumbai was taken down for a couple of hours. It's happened in some other cities in India also in the recent past. We are aware of this. Cybersecurity is not something which can give you 100% guarantees, but yes, India is working very, very closely on this with a couple of countries, right? No doubt we are a reasonably, you can consider India a soft power giant as such. But in the realm of cybersecurity, there are many countries which are looking at this. India is looking both at its military aspects and non-military aspects. There is a tremendous scope for cooperation in this field. And I think it's just a matter of time before India opens itself out. At the moment, most nations are feeling a little apprehensive about cooperation on cybersecurity because they think that much of their own information will get compromised by a second nation getting to know it. For example, the United States has taken the better part of almost 18 years, 17 years before signing the various agreements with India, BICA, for example. It's taken almost 17 years to sign BICA. No one wants to compromise on their technologies that they have achieved. So you will find that this particular domain of cybersecurity will move, but will move very slowly in the near future. A lot depends upon the trust which exists between nations before you actually enter into agreements on this. My last part, this aspect about the peripheral. Let me not speak so much about the relationships in the ASEAN region on this and on RCEP. I'm sure Premesha will be able to answer that perhaps more comprehensively. My domain is climate change. My domain is disaster. Let me speak about this a little more, right? I assure you, COP26, COP27, these are very, very complex procedures which are going on at the moment. For every comma and every full stop and every alphabet which is added to these resolutions, there's a tremendous give and take. If you had gone to Sharm el Sheikh during the COP27 conference, they had 5 to 10,000 delegates all over, and they were meeting areas all over Sharm el Sheikh at that particular time. This is one of the most complex issues that the world is facing. India has given an assurance. 2070, our Prime Minister has reiterated this, that we will come down to a virtual zero emission policy, and we are working towards it. This is something we are already working on. For example, emissions of automobiles. We are already working on this. There are certain companies of ours which have said by 2035, they will stop producing any fossil fuel vehicles which will be put in the market. These are the kind of measures which are already being undertaken by India. But remember, this is the aspect of climate change, and the whole aspect of COP is not about a single nation taking actions. It is about various nations making compromises. And remember, if you make compromises in this, obviously it affects your overall development indices. So this is something which is going to move very, very slowly in the near future. The only thing is, yes, the developing nations, the nations which are on the march, which are friendly, trust each other, can band together and cooperate much more to speed up the whole process of ensuring control over climate change. This is something which will be very, very welcome in the upcoming COP28 when it comes up in Dubai in the very near future. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Next, I invite Dr. Premesha Saha, if you have any comments about those 3 questions, please. You're still mute your Zoom.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm actually very happy that Lieutenant General Sir took on the climate change questions, because that is not my domain of expertise. I'm thankful for that. But with regard to the other 3 questions, first is to take off from where Sir left on the non-alignment stand and how India is dealing with the great power competition that is there in the region. I think, as Sir very clearly mentioned, there are doubts as to whether India has moved away from the non-alignment stand. India has not greatly moved away from the non-alignment stand. The difference needs to be understood here. It is in our constitution that India doesn't enter into alliances with countries. We are not treaty allies. For instance, like for example, let's take the case of, say, US, Philippines, for instance. India, that's why when we are talking about, India being a part of so many arrangements, the term that we are using are issue-based partnerships, or in very simple terms, partnerships which is serving our interests in some sort of our interests. Okay. So say, for instance, even if, say, we are part of the Quad, we are part of the India-Japan Australia instance, for we are also a part of Russia, India, China grouping, right? So we are a part of issue-based alliances. We still maintain say, for instance, a neutral stand, though India is against the Russia-Ukraine war, that has been repeatedly stressed in numerous platforms. India has been trying to, whenever there has been talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with Putin, for example, India has stressed that war is not the solution for anything, and India is against the war. But still some sort of a neutral stand is taken when it comes to a dispute. Through humanitarian assistance, through talks, through negotiations, it has been repeatedly stressed that war is not the solution. So I think in those terms, neutrality and not entering into any treaty alliances with countries, that is still there. It's only issue-based partnerships that is happening in the context of the Indo-Pacific, right? When it comes to dealing with great power competition, many, especially in the Chinese media, it has sometimes been said that India is doing all that US wants it to do, but that is not the case. That is not at all the case. And very similar to ASEAN, India is also trading the middle path when it comes to the great power competition. India is also not choosing any sides when it comes to the great power competition. The policies that India is undertaking is because of India's own turmoil with China. It has nothing to do with US's turmoil with China, right? So depending on the border dispute, depending on the clashes and the turmoil we are facing at the LSE, India's stand has been transformed, has been dictated by those events. Okay. So that has to be, clearly that has to be rectified. When it comes to cybersecurity, again, cybersecurity is not so much my domain of expertise, but if I have to speak, I think right now it's very important that the importance of cybersecurity and cyber cooperation is very much understood. Though we have said that, for instance, as even Sir said, that security is a very broad spectrum. We just don't talk about hard security. There are other issues. For example, cybersecurity is one of them. And you do see groupings like the Quad understanding the importance of cybersecurity. That's why there are working groups which are formed under the Quad, and cybersecurity and critical and emerging tech is one of them. So I think, in those aspects, there are discussions, there are talks going on between countries with regards to cybersecurity, especially with regards to critical and emerging technology, generative AI, and other components. Okay. When it comes to RCEP, I think it has to be understood in context of what India has gained from FTA arrangements. It cannot be just seen from the context of India walking away from RCEP. Okay, India is also not part of the trade pillar of the IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is also a very nascent development. But still, India has clearly mentioned that it will be a part of the other pillars, but not a part of the trade pillar. This has largely to do with, though I want to clarify at the outset, I'm not an economics expert, but it has to be clarified at the outset what India has in general gained from FTA arrangements. One thing has to be seen also with regards to RCEP. Most of the countries who are a part of RCEP, India already has FTA arrangements with them, with most of them, free trade agreement. Okay. The main concern was Chinese goods getting, flooding the Indian market. That was one of the primary concerns which led India, after numerous negotiations, not to be a part of the RCEP. Okay, so it has to do strictly on the basis of India's own gains from these, free trade agreements or trading arrangements that are there in picture. Much more detailed analysis probably could be given by an economic expert and not by a geostrategic learner. I will not call myself an expert, but in those contexts. But this is the preliminary, a very a basic way of putting it. Core and periphery, I think, if you look at how India, what is the geographical definition of the Indo-Pacific to India, you will actually understand that India doesn't divide it as core and periphery. Okay, many countries, for example, for countries like Japan, Australia, US, the Indo-Pacific is the Eastern Indian Ocean region and the Western Pacific. It stops at India's western coast, right? But India's geography stretches from the eastern coast of Africa all the way along the South Pacific. That is India's definition of the Indo-Pacific. So obviously, it is nothing to do with core and periphery in those regards. Yeah. Yes, India, if you can say, obviously, through its engagements with the Quad, that India is engaging much more deeply with, say, the 4 Quad members. But also, there are other, arrangements coming into picture. For example, the I2U2, which has also come in, which involves Middle Eastern countries, for example. It is another arrangement which India is a part of. You have the India-Australia-France arrangement, for example, which is now to the level of foreign ministers. So there, India is also working very closely with European countries, with EU, which has also come up with its own Indo-Pacific. India and Germany, if you see the maritime cooperation which is happening, the ship visits which are happening, it has also gone up several notches, several levels. So it is not only that India is engaging with Japan, Australia, and the United States. There are other important countries in the Indo-Pacific also with whom India is engaging. Also with regards to ASEAN, if look at the India-Indonesia relations, for instance, we now from 2018 onwards have Samudra Shakti, the bilateral naval exercises which happens. We initially just had coordinated patrol exercises, but now we have Samudra Shakti. There are a lot of other developments also happening in these kind of in these regards. Okay, so India's engagement is not just seen as defined by the geographical definitions. It's not in terms of core and periphery. The Western powers is as much important to us as seen even the Middle East has now become a part of India's Indo-Pacific, as seen from the I2U2 as well. So in those regards also, India and EU is doing a lot of connectivity, partnership agreements with African countries. India and European Union have come up with a connectivity initiative, connectivity agreement. So India is engaging with other countries as well on a similar, in similar ways. So I think that is how also India's engagements in the Indo-Pacific needs to be seen. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Premesha. I think response from Dr. Premesha and and General Atta is enough for us to answer all of the questions that forum already given to us. Oh, discuss outside, yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that's the end of this session. Yeah. Thank you very much for all of the speakers, General Atta, Dr. Premesha, Pak Makmur, Mas Haryadi, and
I think the sound has got muted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, back.
Oh, group photo. Okay, maybe later with the MC. And I think I will close this session with one of the I take quotation from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He said that we live in an interdependent world. An isolated India is not our interest. He said like that, and I think this is interesting things. Then thank you for following this discussion. Once again, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mas Agung, for moderating the discussion, our speakers for the presentation, and our audience for the participations. Now we would like to ask all of our speakers to please stand up in your position to receive a token of appreciation from our Vice Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Indonesia, Mbak Nurul Isnaini, PhD, and Head of the Department of International Relations, Universitas Indonesia, Mbak Asra Virgianita, PhD.
Yes, we invite Mbak Nurul and Mbak Asra to hand in the certificates for our moderator and speakers for today. All right. To Mbak Nurul, Mbak Asra, and our speakers. We will also take pictures. Harusnya cuma moderator sendiri yang
foto dari atas. Kayaknya lebih cepat tuh.
To Mbak Nurul, Mbak Asra,
Iya.
and our speakers.
Mungkin biar
Yes.
kelihatan sama audiens.
Thank you so much. Next up, we will be taking pictures with our audience. So Mbak Nurul, Mbak Asra may maybe stand up here, facing the stage. And dear audience, you may all stay seated for the photo session with our speakers and moderators.
Sorry for the audience, please stand up in your position to take pictures with our speakers today. Thank you.
Masa dosennya lebih milenial dari aku.
All right. Now we have come to the end of our agenda. Thank you so much for staying with us. We hope that today's seminar has succeeded in providing new knowledge and insights for all of our audience.
Baik, untuk para audiens diharapkan untuk tetap di sini ya, karena kita akan melaksanakan buka puasa bersama.
Dilanjut juga dengan kultum dari Mas Sofwan. Thank you so much. Have a good dulu ya. Oh ya, oke. Have a good iftar everyone.
Thank you so much.
Oke, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, menjelang maghrib, menjelang beduk, menjelang saat yang ditunggu-tunggu oleh kita semua yang berbuka puasa ya hari ini. Alhamdulillah, terima kasih untuk kehadiran rekan-rekan mahasiswa ataupun audiens yang lain ya. Terima kasih banyak. Alhamdulillah kita bisa mencarakan acara ini. Kegiatan seminar sekaligus kita rangkai dengan buka puasa Departemen HI FISIP UI. Tahun ini alhamdulillah ramai sekali, ya senang sekali teman-teman bisa hadir ya. Biasanya kita sederhana di ruang departemen, hari ini alhamdulillah bisa kita rayakan bersama. Kemudian tentu juga terima kasih pada Pak Anjaiah ya yang sudah memoderasi ataupun juga memfasilitasi kegiatan ini. Terima kasih banyak Pak, dan mudah-mudahan kita akan lanjut dengan kegiatan-kegiatan lainnya, mungkin nanti dengan pertunjukan budaya segala macam dengan India ya, tadi udah ngobrol sama Pak Anjaiah, jadi kita tunggu yang ke depan nih kerjasamanya ya Pak Anjaiah ya untuk kegiatan-kegiatan lainnya. Oke, sebelum buka puasa kita punya aset, kita punya modalitas bagus nih untuk ceramah kultum biasa. Kapan lagi ya dengar, biasanya kalau Mas Sofwan ngajarnya kan teori ekopolin ya, Adam Smith ya. Ini nanti bukan Adam Smith yang disebut-sebut ya, Mas Sofwan ya. Bukan Friedrich List ya, bukan Friedman dan lain sebagainya. Teorinya nggak pakai hari ini. Ini bukan teori, ini sudah hukum nanti ya, wajib dan sunnah dan makruh segala macamnya ya, Mas Sofwan. Oke, belum pernah dengar Mas Sofwan kultum kan? Biasanya di kontekstual isunya isu-isu politik ya HI. Hari ini kita dengarkan Mas Sofwan membawakan kultum dalam rangkaian acara buka puasa kita. Silakan Mas Sofwan.
Ini kultum apa stand up comedy? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Innal hamdalillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh la nabiyya ba'dah. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yaumiddin. Guru-guru saya sekalian dan teman-teman, pertama-tama klarifikasi, ini bukan kultum, tablik akbar. Pas Mbak Asra kemarin minta, itu saya sedang masuk ke ruangan rapat gitu ya, karena beliau berdua sedang bersembunyi, rupanya sedang melakukan sesuatu yang tidak mau dilihat yang lain gitu ya. Nah, terus saya diminta untuk ngisi kultum. Bayangan saya adalah karena biasanya kalau buka bersama di HI itu ya kultum di ruangan lounge itu yang isinya cuma 5, 6 ya sampai 15 orang gitu paling baik. Ya, oke, insya Allah gitu ya. Jadi pas dikasih tahu bahwa ini sekalian untuk menutup acara seminar, Masya Allah. Ini bukan kultum, ini tablik akbar, tapi ya dengan kondisi ini semoga nanti tetap ada manfaatnya, khususnya karena kita sekarang berRamadan di masa yang seharusnya membuat kita merenungi makna Ramadan dengan lebih dalam. Beberapa waktu yang lalu ya, Ramadan kita bebarengan dengan launching dari laporan ke-6 assessment report dari IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, yang mengatakan bahwa periode 2011 sampai 2020 ini suhu global secara umum meningkat sampai 1,1 derajat Celcius. Rata-rata ya dibandingkan dengan periode 1850 sampai periode 1900. Peningkatan 1,1 derajat Celcius pada tahun 2020-an ini tentu bukan kabar yang terlalu menggembirakan, karena kalau proyeksinya jalan terus, maka kita akan melampaui threshold 1.5 ya, atau bahkan 2 derajat Celcius, yang itu artinya kita tidak akan kembali pada kondisi yang kita familiar dan kita bisa hidup dengan layak di dalamnya. Nah, rekan-rekan sekalian dan guru saya sekalian, saya kira Ramadan adalah momentum untuk juga merenungi kita. Ini Ramadan di Anthropocene. Yang ngomong temanya temanya IPGSC kita ke depan itu juga soal IR in the Anthropocene. Ya. Sekarang R dulu di dalam Anthropocene ya, Ramadan di Anthropocene. Saya kira Ramadan adalah momentum yang penting karena ya di sinilah kemudian ya hakikat dari puasa itu, gitu ya. Kalau kita kembali ke ayat yang barangkali kawan-kawan sudah hafal, A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya ayyuhalladzina amanu kutiba alaikumusiyam kama kutiba alal ladzina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Nah, berarti alhamdulillah anak HI ada yang hafal juga gitu. Nah, itu kita kalau mas-mas yang dulu sering ngisi borang-borang kayak FISIP itu akrab dengan input, proses, dan output. Nah, ayat ini juga kira-kira kalau disederhanakan ada gambarannya, inputnya, prosesnya, dan outputnya. Nah, inputnya apa? Ya ayyuhalladzina amanu, wahai orang-orang yang beriman. Jadi puasa itu diperintahkan, dimintakan, diwajibkan kepada orang-orang yang beriman. Karena iman itulah input yang diperlukan. Orang yang tidak beriman boleh puasa nggak? Boleh saja gitu ya, nggak ada masalah. Tetapi yang kemudian akan secara efektif ya menjalankan puasa dalam pengertian spesifik siam tradisi Islam ini inputnya adalah iman tadi. Iman adalah sesuatu yang naik dan turun gitu ya, al-iman yazid wa yanqus kan. Maka dia barangkali menghadirkan pengalaman yang berbeda-beda. Ada orang yang berpuasa tapi inputnya bermasalah, bukan karena iman. Karena biasanya semua orang di sekeliling berpuasa juga misalnya gitu ya. Itu tentu berbeda kualitas puasanya dengan yang inputnya adalah iman tadi gitu kan. Karena kemudian kita akan menghadapi hal-hal yang tidak nyaman. Tapi kita lewat inputnya. Kemudian kita masuk ke kalau ngisi FISIP, habis ngisi input, yang biasanya jelek kalau di Departemen HI, diproses. Nah ini buka kartu, nggak jelek sih, kita tetap terbaik se-FISIP. Ya. Dan tetapi namanya HIUI kan ambi-ambi gitu ya. Jadi kalau nilainya nggak full 5, excellent itu rasanya agak kurang. Nah biasanya agak kurang ini di bagian proses. Nah, itu sudah baik, tapi HI kan maunya sangat baik gitu ya. Nah itu biasanya diproses. Nah di proses ini, kalau di ayat ini prosesnya apa? Kutiba alaikumusiyam, kama kutiba ala ladzina min qablikum. Diwajibkan atas kamu berpuasa. Jadi prosesnya adalah puasa. Tapi puasa ini karena dia proses, kualitasnya juga macam-macam. Kalau di FISIP tadi ada cukup, ada baik, ada sangat baik gitu ya, ada yang kurang. Puasa juga akan ditentukan pada kualitas proses tadi. Maka kita mengenal 3 derajat puasa. Ada yang puasanya derajatnya syariat. Ya, puasa yang derajatnya adalah memenuhi kriteria-kriteria syariat. Puasa syariat itu apa? Puasa yang kita memenuhi syarat sahnya puasa. Apa? Nggak makan dan nggak minum. Ya, nggak melakukan hal-hal yang membatalkan puasa dari dimulainya waktu puasa tadi sampai di akhirnya waktu puasa, yaitu waktu berbuka. Nggak makan, nggak minum. Tapi banyak juga yang dia secara syariat, dia tidak melanggar puasanya. Puasanya nggak batal, tapi masih ngerjain orang gitu kan. Masih ngomongin orang, ya, masih ghibah session gitu. Masih melakukan hal-hal yang mengurangi kualitas puasanya. Puasanya batal atau enggak? Enggak batal. Tapi kualitasnya tidak optimal, ya kan? Dia levelnya syariat, dia nggak batal, tapi kualitasnya nggak optimal gitu kan ya. Level yang kedua adalah level hakikat. Dia tahu hakikat dari puasa itu, gitu ya. Puasa itu untuk apa, gitu ya? Jadi nggak cuma untuk menahan lapar dan haus saja, tapi kemudian misalnya membuat kita jadi lebih baik. Jadi tidak hanya dia akan membatasi diri dari hal-hal yang membatalkan puasa secara syariat, tapi dia akan menghindari hal-hal yang mengurangi kualitas puasanya. Dia menahan mulutnya untuk berbicara hal-hal buruk, dia menahan hatinya untuk curiga, ya, suudzon, untuk kemudian iri ya kepada orang lain atau membicarakan keburukan orang lain dan seterusnya. Tapi kemudian ada level yang paling tinggi, ya, yang kita kenal sebagai level nih, kalau sering bercanda di departemen, levelnya Mas Yandri gitu kan ya. Sudah makrifat ya, makomnya sudah makrifat. Nah makrifat itu apa? Makrifat itu kita sudah paham betul kenapa kita berpuasa. Kita tahu bahwa puasa ini adalah bagian dari proses kita la'allakum tattaqun, untuk kemudian menjadi orang yang bertakwa. Orang yang bertakwa itu apa? Sahabat Umar pernah bertanya kepada seorang sahabat lain, takwa itu apa? Anda pernah jalan nggak di jalan yang kanan kirinya itu ada onak berduri? Pernah. Apa yang Anda lakukan di situ? Anda berhati-hati. Anda hati-hati kenapa? Karena Anda nggak mau menyakiti orang, Anda nggak mau menyakiti bahkan nggak cuma orang, gitu ya, yang ada di sekeliling Anda. Karena ketakwaan itu nggak ada ukurannya. At-taqwa hahuna kata Rasulullah, adanya di sini, tapi dia bisa muncul dari indikator yang di luar. Apa? Indikator minimal itu adalah orang lain tidak merasa terganggu oleh tangan Anda. Ya, jadi orang lain itu tidak merasa dirugikan oleh Anda. Ya, keberadaan Anda tidak merugikan orang lain. Yang paling puncak adalah khairun nas anfa'uhum linnas, ketika manfaatnya adalah yang paling baik bagi sesamanya. Nah, guru-guru saya sekalian dan rekan-rekan sekalian, ini dalam proses inilah maka mari kita renungkan gitu ya, puasa kita itu sampai di level yang mana hari ini kan? Apakah kita masih sekedar syariat yang penting nggak batal aja gitu ya, atau bahkan batal juga ya. Kemudian yang kedua, atau sudah sampai level hakikat ya, kita membatasi diri dari hal-hal yang mengurangi kebaikan puasa kita, atau kita mencoba melakukan betul-betul puasa itu sehingga nanti kita menjadi output yang beneran ya, menjadi orang yang bertakwa tadi. Nah orang yang bertakwa tadi ciri-cirinya dia tidak lagi didorong oleh impuls dasar manusia gitu ya, perilakunya. Kenapa? Karena dia dipandu oleh ketakwaan pada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa. Impuls dasar manusia itu apa? Ya kalau dalam Al-Quraish itu kita lihat ada yang namanya khauf dan ada yang namanya ju'. Ya kalau dalam bahasa HI-nya ada freedom from fear dan freedom from want. Ada fear dan want. Dan dua kekuatan ini kan yang kalau kita belajar HI ini dianggap mewarnai perilaku kumpulan manusia seperti negara atau aktor-aktor yang lain juga. Ada realis yang bicara bahwa kita ini digerakkan oleh fear, oleh khauf. Ya kan? Karena kita nggak tahu apa yang dilakukan oleh orang lain, maka kita harus menyelamatkan diri kita sendiri. Ya, ini self-help system di dalam sebuah sistem yang anarkis. Tapi ada juga yang kemudian membangun gagasannya untuk kemudian memenuhi want, gitu ya, apa yang diinginkan. Ya, bahwa kehidupan itu adalah pursuit of happiness. Bahwa kemajuan sebuah masyarakat itu diukur dari sebanyak apa? Sums of enjoyment yang dia bisa nikmati. Ini kalau kita lihat lagi tadi dibilang nggak nyebut Adam Smith, ini saya sebut lagi Adam Smith gitu ya. Dan David Ricardo gitu ya. Karena konseptualisasi wealth kita itu didasarkan kepada jumlah needs dan wants yang dapat kita konsumsi dalam satu periode tertentu yang kemudian nanti kita terjemahkan ke dalam GDP tadi gitu ya. Tapi ketakwaan membuat kita seharusnya melampaui dua impuls itu, fear maupun wants tadi gitu ya. Manusia itu selalu bertarung dalam dirinya untuk melampaui potensi keburukan yang dihadirkan oleh fear dan wants tadi. Ya, Anda ketika berinteraksi dengan orang lain, di dalam diri Anda itu didorong oleh fear dan wants tadi. Keinginan untuk diakui, keinginan untuk mendapatkan sesuatu, keinginan untuk mengambil yang kita inginkan, yang kita butuhkan, dan seterusnya. Yang itu akan membawa kita kepada keburukan. Wa nafsi wa masawaha fa'alhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha. Tapi kita bisa memilih takwa. Kita bisa memilih untuk mengendalikan impuls yang didorong oleh fear, oleh khauf, dan oleh wants tadi. Dan ketika kita mampu menundukkannya, maka kita menjadi pribadi yang bertakwa. Inilah output yang tadi. Secara kolektif, ketika kita didorong oleh wants dan oleh fear tadi, maka kita tidak bisa menghentikan apa yang diramalkan oleh IPCC tadi. Kenapa? Oh, Cina nggak ngurangi emisi, kalau saya ngurangi emisi nanti Cina jadi lebih maju dari saya. Maka collective action untuk bikin aksi iklim nggak bisa. Sebaliknya juga, ya kan, kita kemudian pursuit of happiness, kita ngumpulin sebanyak-banyaknya apa yang bisa kita nikmati. Maka kemudian daya dukung alam tidak melihat. Maka puasa kita adalah upaya kita untuk melatih mengendalikan fear, ya, khauf, ya, dan wants kita, yang material maupun yang imaterial, supaya kita menjadi pribadi yang lebih baik, menjadi pribadi yang bertakwa,